Well, welcome to the Get Fit with Jodelle podcast. I am, as usual, Jodelle. And so, are you run down, tired, listless? Do you poop out at parties? Okay, I'm done with the Lucy quotes, but seriously, I'm seeing more and more in my practice of people chronically low on energy, fatigued out like crazy. And in general, it seems like everyone's health is really struggling, especially during this pandemic. But just in general, a lot of gut health, a lot of diseases coming on, a lot of cancer, and especially that fatigue we mentioned. So think of it from a cellular health standpoint. If we are made of trillions of cells, and each one of those cells has a little engine inside of it that may or may not be working, then wouldn't it stand to reason that we really need to tune up our engines or of our cells, so to speak? So that's where we enter mitochondria, the little engines inside virtually every one of your cells. And to learn more about mitochondria, enhance our energy, and resist metabolic diseases that are plaguing many today, I've brought on someone who I consider a leading expert in the field of mitochondrial enhancing. After reading his new book, which has not even hit the market yet, but is going to, and I want you guys to be prepared, you are definitely going to want to have it on your shelf as a constant reference. I can speak for myself. I'm constantly going back to it right now. And I have to have this talk with Randy Lee Code, aka the Mito Man, because he is who I consider someone who, in layman's terms, really breaks down how we can enhance our health, more so than any mainstream paradigm that's out there. He's about to shift your thinking about health, so make sure you have a notebook handy or just listen and refer back to this podcast several times. It's going to blow the paradigm to bits of what mainstream media says about improving your health. And it's not as complicated as the functional doctors or nutritionists sometimes can make it out to be. It's not about the food, as you've heard me say before. You are going to want to take notes. You're going to want to listen to this over and over. You're going to want to get his book when we're at the end here, and we tell you how to do that at some point when it launches. But in the meantime, we are going to give you real easy tips to implement starting today that will enhance your mitochondria. And most of them are free. It's nothing you have to go buy or do, other than maybe a little lifestyle hack here and there. So I will also be discussing a really interesting phenomenon with Randy that I had nothing about until he enlightened me to it. So stay tuned for that as well. Randy is an independent researcher as well as the author of the up-and-coming book, my new favorite, The Mitochondrial Manifesto. He calls himself a false reality decoder and has learned from many of the greatest quantum health specialists out there, such as Dr. Jack Kruse, who I follow and learn from as well. And I've interviewed him as well. And Randy also has coined a lot of his research from Dr. Doug Wallace, Dr. Dean Bonley, Dr. Martin Paul, Gerald Pollack, Zach Bush, and a slew of others. So after my long spiel here, I am so excited for you guys to meet someone so fascinating, Randy Code. Randy, welcome.
Thank you, Jodelle. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into the fact that you have helped me learn and to teach bioenergetics and mitochondrial health in layman's terms. So yeah, there's a lot of people out there talking about mitochondria, but you have really helped me break it down to my clients in a way that is usable and understandable and implementable in their lives, more so than anyone else. So, I filled them in on kind of what mitochondria is in layman's terms, but amping it up, why is that so crucial to our health? And what got you into researching it?
Well, the biophysics that run the body, but by the way, I have a new subtitle that really sums it up. It's The Mitochondrial Manifesto, How Nature Nurtures the Human Body and Technology Torments It. So it's a little less scary than the first subtitle. Okay. And that kind of sums up how nature supports the human body and maintains it, heals it, and helps you recover when you're sick. Mm-hmm. So that is biophysics. It's light, water, and magnetism affecting the mitochondria and your circadian rhythms. So,
fine, yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a way in which we can restore our health naturally, just with nature. Like nature makes it so simple, but we make it so complicated. One of my favorite quotes in your book is, our multiple sins against nature have stretched our coping mechanisms to the limit, meaning we are indoors, which we were made to be outdoors. We eat processed foods, which we were made to eat foods from the earth. We're around non-native EMF, which we'll be discussing, and we should be around native EMF from earthing and sunlight. And we wake with the sun or go to bed with this. We don't wake with the sun or go to bed with the sun, which defies what our first humans did prior to the invention of the light bulb, all of which has contributed to our health decline, our sins against nature, as you said. So I love that. So it's really as simple as getting back to nature, yes?
Absolutely. And we tend to ignore and dismiss the ways that nature does support our body. It's really kind of silly when you think about it, that the pharmaceutical industry, it tries to mimic what actually happens in nature when they try to create a drug from an herb. They find some phenomena that happens in nature, and they create an artificial thing that they can patent, and that's what we're seeing all around us today.
Okay, so I also love where you say your body isn't defective, it's your environment. Walk us through why most of the diseases plaguing people today, including low immune function during a pandemic, is a mitochondrial issue, and why health really begins and ends with mitochondria.
Well, mitochondria really are at the nexus, I call it, of all things health in the body or sickness. They determine how you process food, how you metabolize food, and create energy for the body. And they're also environmental sensors, which is kind of interesting. They actually are aware of all the different things that are happening in your environment, from electromagnetic frequencies to the light that is absorbed in photosynthesis into your plants. And so they determine what season it is, and they adjust the way your food is processed. So in late fall, for example, as you're eating foods that are like carbs and sugar, so it makes a big difference in how your body responds to food. And in late fall and winter, your body naturally will want to put on more weight to prepare you for winter scarcity. And so it'll actually decrease the efficiency of your mitochondria. It'll produce more heat to help you survive the winter, and it'll help you put on more fat. And so that's why a lot of people will have a lot of trouble losing weight, or they gain more weight is a better way to put it, in winter. And it's much easier to lose weight in spring and summer, is because the efficiency of your mitochondria is tuned differently depending on the light frequencies in the food, and also what you get on your skin and eyes.
Yeah, light frequency in food, that might be a new thought for people. So as far as like how our food is grown, the light it absorbs, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, in photosynthesis, the electrons in food get programmed by the sunlight that strikes them. So literally the electrons absorb UV light frequencies and other frequencies. And when your gut digests it, it releases those frequencies as photons.
Okay.
It literally projects those light frequencies onto your gut lining, and your gut lining absorbs that and it responds. It's like a sensor. It's very interesting. I can't say I understand it completely, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's really cool. So like I said, it's really not about the food. If we're talking electrons, like it's not really about proteins, carbs, or fat. So why is it really about electrons? And help us understand how our bodies, our modern technology is kind of stealing our electrons.
Well, pretty much everything in modern living steals electrons, just from EMFs, Wi-Fi, wireless signals, microwave ovens. If you think about it, microwaves are designed to heat water, and so they bombard water with the exact frequency that water vibrates to and heats up to. So this is something I just kind of made note of recently, is if you're in the same environment with the same frequencies that a microwave oven uses, then it's exactly the wrong frequencies for your body, because it's heating the water in your body,
Sure.
releasing electrons. It's dislodging electrons and dislodging water. And water is crucial to the operation of our bodies in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm. When you say electrons, like is every cell of our body full of electrons? And like how does that equate to the proteins, carbs, and fats? Should we really be counting on our electrons versus all this calorie counting?
Electrons are an essential part of every atom. Electrons are essential because they are redox potential, which means they are the force that moves materials in the body and creates chemical reactions. So when you don't have electrons, not only can you not absorb light properly, but you can't heal properly. You can't move materials as well in your body. Mm-hmm. And the chemical reactions don't work as well. Moving things around in the body, creating chemical reactions like digestion and absorbing light.
When you say moving materials, so we need electrons to move minerals into the cells like calcium and magnesium. And then do we get electrons from our food? Is that what actually protein, fats, and carbs are, is actually electrons?
Yeah, electrons are the most important part of food, okay. I would say. The health or sickness of the health or not so healthiness of your food is that when you process food, it naturally depletes the electrons. It loses electrons. And so you have more positive charge, you have more acidity. And that's one of the biggest factors in why processed foods are not so good for you, is that they're higher in acidity and they're lower in electrons relative to protons. And that's why you see a lot of people talking about alkalinity, talk about alkalinity being the primary factor that brings about good health.
I love that. I love that you called it like the processed foods are really the ones lacking electrons. So actually, more than looking at a fiber-rich diet, we should really be looking for an electron-rich diet and choosing those foods that still have their electrons intact, such as foods from the earth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So no, that's really cool. I mean, people need to know it's not about food, but food is an aspect of electrons. So what is another area that we get electrons from? Because I understand we get it from the earth, from the sun. So how do we get electrons from that?
Well, in the old days, we used to ground ourselves, which means we used to be in direct contact with the earth. And we used to live in dirt huts or at the equator, just kind of outdoors. So we used to sleep on the ground, and that's how we got an electron push. Okay. The earth is actually negatively charged. So when we're touching the earth, we get electrons, but we're kind of insulated today. We don't get that. We wear rubber-soled shoes. We don't get outside. We hardly ever get actual sunlight on our skin. So we're all deficient in electrons. And that blocks a major path that nature supports our biology. Is grounding. There's recent as in 20 years ago, Clint Ober developed ways that we can earth ourselves with man-made equipment. He calls it earthing.
Right.
So we all need to get out and ground ourselves more often.
Yeah, which is why you feel so good by walking by an ocean barefoot or sitting in the lake, floating in a body of water. You feel really connected to the earth, but also physically you're connected, getting those free electrons. Yeah. And then what about the sun?
Well, it's interesting. The sun is actually helps you ground. So when you're physically connected to the earth and you're getting sun, you're actually getting it kind of like from two directions. Sunlight enhances the electron uptake.
So just sitting in the sun with our feet on the earth, we could load up ourselves with free electrons, right?
Yeah, and that is what mitochondriacs call redox potential. It is, it's like a biological battery in that you need to have electrical differential that, again, moves materials, it creates chemical reactions or it facilitates chemical reactions. And we are literally depleted of electrical charge in our modern world. We need to charge up our batteries. That's how we used to get most of our energy and most of our healing capacity. We're supposed to get 2/3 of our energy from grounding and sunlight and things like that, and 1/3 from our food. But it's kind of flipped nowadays that we're getting way too much energy from our food, and that comes at a higher biological cost because you have the insulin level and you have just digestion alone. There's a burden to that. There's a cost to be paid for it because you get more toxins. You get just incomplete combustion products, free radicals.
Sure. Yeah, no, out of all the time I studied redox potential from Dr. Cruz, I never fully understood it to the degree I do now after reading it in your book. It's much more broken down into understandable terms. So talk to my listeners in layman's terms, the symptoms of your body of if your redox potential is working or not.
Gosh, it's everything actually. It's a feeling of low energy, it's brain fog, it's inability to digest your food.
Sure.
It's toxin buildup. It's everything that is when your mammalian battery is weak, everything is affected. I actually think most people are suffering from that very situation. It's poor health. It's all around. We could go down the list. Electro Hypersensitivity. It's poor sleep.
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up when you said it's generally poor health. It's everything, like you said, because our mitochondria is everything. So would you call like low redox potential really mitochondrial disease? All of these things that are plaguing mankind, is that what you would call mitochondrial deficiency or disease?
Yeah, I think if you basically have a low healing capacity, that's electron deficiency. They're pretty much the same. And I guess you'd kind of know it. You'd always feel not entirely vital, not entirely well when you're electron deficient and when your body's not functioning as well. I thought of another one. It's when you're electron deficient, your redox potential won't allow as much water into the cell. So hydration itself requires a good electrical differential. All these different factors go in at a very root level to creating health or sickness. If you can't hydrate, you could be drinking all the water you can, but if it can't get inside the cell, then you're not only can you not create what we call the easy exclusion zone, which is your battery power of the cell, but you can't get toxins out, you can't get minerals in, and you can't get toxins out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just had a client I was consulting with, and she said to me, one of my symptoms is I just feel like I'm kind of dying. And she's young, she's not old. And just the idea of her saying that out loud, I thought of, wow, you have like 0 electrons, or you have very low redox potential, and we really need to get that up. So some things I'm working on with her is going out in the sun, grounding, earthing, and it's, she would expect me to be putting her on all these different supplements, but it's really as simple as just recharging that mammalian battery, like you said, and why it is really about light, water, and magnetism. So let's break down those 3 things. Like, when it comes to sunlight, why is it not just about vitamin D? I know we've talked about electrons, but is there more to it even than that, like the light, the infrared light? And when it comes to water, maybe you can explain EZ water and what that is in our cell a little bit more.
Yeah, sunlight actually charges the water in our cells, which is kind of a newly discovered phenomenon. Gerald Pollack and associates discovered that infrared light actually creates charge separation in water. So water has tremendous electrical potential, but it's neutral because you have two positive H's and oxygen molecule with a -2 charge, so it's neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But IR light actually breaks that up and reconfigures the molecules into what we call exclusion zone water. And that forms a negative charge directly around water-loving surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a positive charge in a separate pool. But by breaking that up, that creates redox potential. It creates the ability to do a lot of things in the body that the body needs to do. Hydration is one of them. We just talked about that.
Right.
So sunlight is super important. It runs your circadian systems.
Mm-hmm.
It allows your body to know what time of day it is and what program it should be running. Mm-hmm. It controls sleep patterns, waking patterns. It tells you your body when to release hormones and when to stop releasing hormones, which is a big deal nowadays.
Really, sunlight is so much more than vitamin D. I mean, like you said, it's affecting our hormones, and so many people I'm seeing have such imbalanced hormones or none at all, like no sex hormones, no libido, no anything like that. And it could be as simple as, are you getting enough sunlight to power those hormones and to power the chemicals in your body to help make the hormones? And then you explain the easy water so well. So really, to break it down, it's like we are made of 50 to 60% water. So we need to make sure we have the right water within us. And sunlight is an easy way to make that happen. Easy, no pun intended, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to build that easy, stay away from fluoride.
Yeah.
Stay away from deuterium, which is a whole another subject.
Yeah, you can break that down. Go for it.
Oh,
you do it really well in your book. By the way, I have the advanced copy, which is like my new Bible for health. But yeah, I do love how deuterium is a hard topic for a lot of people to understand. So perhaps breaking that down, just like you do in your book, just for the layperson, what is deuterium and why is it important to deplete?
It's still a pretty new subject. They've only discovered it and kind of delved into it recently within the last, 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. But deuterium is basically hydrogen with an extra neutron in the nucleus. And that causes the mitochondria to handle it differently. The last stage of ATP energy production requires that hydrogen be in a certain form. Having deuterium in a different, it's a different shape, and it doesn't fit through what we call the ATPase, the last stage of ATP production. Mm-hmm. It clogs it up, and it compromises ATP efficiency of production. And that's one of the ways the body controls seasonal cycles. Mm-hmm. Is that deuterium in certain vegetables and fruits will clog up the ATPase in the mitochondria and make mitochondria less efficient at certain portions of the certain cycles of the year that require you to put on extra weight, or that's the way nature designed us to. And in the spring and summer, if you're eating high deuterium fruits and vegetables, the sunlight, you're getting more sunlight, so it kind of compensates for that. And that's nature's way of balancing out seasonal cycles and weight cycles and stuff like that. That's kind of interesting in itself, is the way the body kind of uses what could be considered a toxin to adjust the efficiency of the tuning of your mitochondria. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what I find interesting about deuterium is that processed foods are very high in deuterium. So again, you've lost electrons in processed food, you have really high deuterium, and that is going to be very detrimental to your body. Whereas eating foods in season, like you mentioned, like if it's spring and summer and there's foods growing in your garden or at the local farmer's market, probably lower in deuterium. But if you're eating a banana in the dead of winter and it came from the middle of Mexico, then it's probably going to be higher in deuterium, and it's not something we would naturally have. So again, it's like a sin against nature. We're eating foods out of season, and we're eating foods that have been processed and not earth-based foods.
Deuterium it's a big deal because it compromises the efficiency of mitochondria. And when you can't make energy, you can't do things like your immune system doesn't work as well. You can't fight off cancer as well.
Yeah.
You're more inclined to get diabetes. There's a lot of different issues that happen with deuterium. So there's a big industry that's developing around depleting your deuterium.
Mm-hmm.
There's clinics. There's a deuterium depletion center. I think it's in LA. And there's commercial interests making deuterium depleted water as a therapeutic,
Mm-hmm.
which is that should be very interesting coming up. Right now, it's really expensive to make, but the deuterium in nature is several points higher than it used to be. It's a good 10 points higher than it used to be in Ice Age days, 10,000 years ago. Nature is designed to handle a certain amount of it, but when you get too much of it, that's when you start, your body cannot compensate for it or can't manage through that.
Yeah, no, that's good. So we've talked about the light and the water. Let's visit the magnetism side of things, like the Earth's magnetism and why it's so great to be plugged into it. And I know there was even a product in your book that I had heard about for years. Like I'd heard Dr. Cruz talking about the Magnetico and other people mentioning it on podcasts and thought, oh, okay, one more thing. But when I read all of the information in your book about magnetism in general, I had to try it. And I went out and bought a Magnetico, and my sleep was transformed. Like sleep has always been somewhere where I struggle as a person that's a high thinker and always on. So the Magnetico was huge for me. So like your thoughts on the Magnetico too, and why it's such a prevalent part of your book.
Magnetism is the big hidden secret that we knew nothing about, but is equally important too. It's more important than food and all this other kind of stuff and exercise, because it's the very root of how electrons and the body creates energy. Valerie Hunt did a very interesting experiment. She wanted to know how a low magnetic field affects the body. So they built this enclosure, this box that shields people completely from magnetic fields, and put 2 test subjects in it just to see what it would do. And what happened was the subjects started to get numbness and tingling in their feet, their arms, their legs, and it worked its way up until it got to the heart and the brain, and at which point the heart and the brain were in such great distress that they had to pull the subjects out, because she figured they'd be dead pretty soon, in an hour or two, if she kept them in there longer. So what that tells you is we actually need to be in a magnetic field to live. And when you're not in a magnetic field, you can't make any energy at all. And so on the flip side, when you're in a higher magnetic field, which the Magnetico does, is it produces multiple amounts of energy in the body.
No, it's amazing. And as far as like the Earth itself, like you were one that enlightened me in your book about how the Earth has a magnetism, but it's dwindling. It's not as high as it used to be. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, based on measurements, they've measured it's called the alignment of magnetite crystals in the Earth in geologic formations. And in dinosaur days, the magnetic field used to be at 300 Gauss, which is huge. Right now, it's about half. It's about 0.5, and even less in some areas. It's higher in some areas and lower in other areas. And that is fundamental to our existence, because we can't live without it. Some people suspect or believe that there's a pole shift coming, where the Earth slows its rotation and the magnetic field drops, and we won't be able to survive, or there'll only be a few things surviving. There's actually historic record in geology that says we've gone through multiple pole shifts, that there's a big die off and then life springs back. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it appears to be happening. I would tend to believe that it's happening.
And that was one of the big ahas I was going to talk to you about. So you jumped right into that beautifully, because yeah, you were the one that informed me of this pole shift, which after I heard it from you, I went and looked up some stuff, and sure enough, like about every 25,000 years, this happens. And it is something that we're due for, correct? Like we could be looking at a pole shift, and you were the one that informed me that in the Ozarks where I live is actually something of a safe zone for this shift. So I guess, yeah, explain, like, are we due for this? And are there other safe zones? What should people know about this?
We may all need to be sleeping on a Magnetica soon if this happens. Maybe the only way you can recharge, because I'm not a geologist, so I can't really say if the magnetic field is going to go to zero in a pole shift like they say, but it's happened many times. So
yeah, so explain the Magnetico, because maybe people aren't familiar with this if they haven't heard Dr. Cruz talk about it, or other doctors like Dr. Dean Bonley, who's the founder of it. Can you explain what the Magnetico is?
Yeah, it's a mattress pad, bed pad that goes underneath your mattress. And it's basically a whole bunch of little magnets arranged in a tight enough formation that it acts like one giant magnet. And it mimics the Earth's magnetic field, which comes out in the southern hemisphere, and it's so big it loops around and comes back into the Earth in the northern hemisphere. So you need to have it coming in the northern hemisphere, coming from the sky into you, through you to the ground. And that's what happens with the Magnetico, is it creates a magnetic field that goes down through you. Dr. Bonley actually discovered, when he first started selling them in the southern hemisphere, that if you align it incorrectly, if you have it going in the wrong direction, then that could actually deplete your the chemistry of your body, the chemical reactions, and the energy production. That's really bad. That can cause like cancer if you're totally depleted because it's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. No, it's transformational for my sleep, because as soon as I put it, the night I put it on my bed, it was like I had one of those instances where I woke up in the early morning and I was like, where am I and what day is it? It was such a deep, profound sleep that I hadn't experienced even after the first night. So, and then the thing about the Magnetico is you put it on the bed, but over time, your sleep even improves more and more. It's almost like your body gets to learn how to rest from the high adrenaline or the high cortisol that many of us are dealing with. So I really love that. I have no affiliation with Magnetico, but we'll put it in the show notes so they can check it out, because it is a phenomenal product. You mentioned
was your body shocked? Was your body shocked that it was getting the resources it needed and was able to do what it wanted to do?
I think that's what I was feeling, honestly. The way you just described it, it's like those raw materials that needed to go where they needed to go were going. Like the magnetism was helping my body get all the raw materials it needed, versus, I've had to come off some of my supplements because I didn't need as many, or maybe my metabolism was running faster and I was heating up even to where I'd have to throw off covers and just experience like sleeping with less covers because I was staying warm, so
really,
little things like that were really cool. And then, I always wake up with energy, but now I wake up with like this calm energy. It's almost like I'm not groggy, but I'm taking more time waking up, versus like I was nervous and I got to get out of bed. I have so much to do. Da, 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 da. Now it's like, oh, I'm awake. I could lay here and relax, and then I'm going to get up and everything's going to be beautiful. Like that kind of feeling. So
interesting. That's your body actually able to make biochemicals. It's able to make hormones and neurotransmitters appropriately to run the programs it needs to run, instead of relying on stimulants and cortisol to just jolt you up in the morning.
Yeah.
So that's good to hear. That's exactly what it does. So you're seeing what they claim it does.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned a while back electro hypersensitivity, which is something I'm enjoying having a lot of mini experts on my podcast to talk about because it is such a real thing. In fact, there's a real medical term that's even in the ICD codes for doctors. That's idiopathic environmental intolerance, to where doctors can actually prescribe for this. But what they should be prescribing is to get away from these non-native EMFs. So can you talk about maybe the symptoms people should be aware of? Because I really feel everybody is affected by electro hypersensitivity. They're just not aware that their allergies, their sleep issues, their body weight issues could all be due to EHS. Can you talk about that?
Well, I would say everyone is sensitive to EMF, but not necessarily hypersensitive.
Okay.
Hypersensitive, I would say, is when you become dysfunctional, when things malfunction on a gross level where you really notice it and it compromises your living quality. That really comes from inefficient mitochondria. It's not working properly. One of those phases of ATP production is not working when you're hypersensitive, and it's a depletion of adaptive ability in your body.
Yeah, and they may not even be aware that they're hypersensitive to it. Like you mentioned, I think everybody has issues with too much EMF, but it may be that they're experiencing anxiety or heart palpitations or sleep issues because of this modern tech world that we're in. I mean, they're swimming in Bluetooth and Wi-Fi in their house, in their business, in their car, in their hand. Like they're carrying around this phone that's connected to a cell tower, it's connected to a Wi-Fi router, it's connected to Bluetooth. And so if we add up all of these different exposures at one time, we're really swimming in a sea of EMF, and we wonder, why am I so anxious? Why am I so nervous? Why do I feel fatigued and yet wired but tired? So some of the symptoms that you mentioned in your book about electro hypersensitivity that I just thought people should be aware of were things like tinnitus and frequent headaches and migraines. Like it may not be something that's, you're just getting these migraines for no reason. You're actually you're having an issue with being hypersensitive to EMF. What are some major players that you yourself have seen people deal with?
I think EHS it affects the body in a lot of different ways. So it could be a number of factors happening. Tinnitus is probably some imbalance in the way the brain receives sound and processes it and turns it into electrical signals, turns it into other forms. It's pretty complex. I just read about that. Brain fog is probably a separate mechanism. It's a different way that EMFs are affecting the brain's capacity to adapt to unnatural resonance, unnatural frequency. So there's a lot of different things going on with EHS.
You mentioned in your book about leaky gut, and food sensitivities can also be related to hypersensitivity to EMF. And, if you think about it, where do people hold their devices? It's right in front of their gut. Maybe their computer's sitting on their lap right in front of their gut. Their phone that they're on, they position it right on their gut while they're, typing on it. So yeah, it's like it may not be, an inflamed gut just from the food you're eating. It could be from our chronic non-native exposure to EMF. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. That's a really profound area for people to check out in your book. One thing I loved about your book was all the bullet points. Like you really break down quickly within each chapter, like real practical things people can do to enhance their health. So walk us through some of your favorites that are just simple, free, easy things people can do that will enhance their mitochondria.
Let's see. The thing that I'm doing is using cold thermogenesis. So when I go exercise, whether I run or bike or whatever, a lot of times I'll go out purposely underdressed, and that actually forces your body to activate cold weather programming. It makes your mitochondria produce more energy, more warmth, more heat to keep your body warm, and that actually it does something weird. It shrinks the water around the respiratory proteins, which are the little workstations in mitochondria. It makes them more efficient, keeps them in tune, because Basically when the respiratory proteins are closer together, electrons have an easier time hopping from place to place. So it makes them more efficient. But that's one of the seasonal regulatory programs in your body to adjust to the climate.
Yeah. I love that.
I like ribose. Have you ever tried ribose as a supplement? But my favorite brand is really expensive. Yeah, it's
like food for your mitochondria, right?
It's a precursor to ATP.
Yeah.
And that helps you produce energy. It's one of my favorite recommendations, but unfortunately, my favorite suppliers, they changed the formula. Grounding whenever I can.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you said grounding.
Getting out, grounding, going swimming, touching real earth. SunLight. I'm bike riding more with I bought a tan through shirt, and sometimes now I go shirtless to try to get as much sunlight.
Sure.
And also I'm biking without my glasses now.
Mm-hmm.
So, opening my sunroof when I'm driving, opening the windows, trying to get as much sun, that in itself actually produces major changes. And you'll see some unusual things happen. Like if you don't wear glasses in the sunlight, your eyesight will actually improve. What else? What have you tried, Jodelle, that you found to be beneficial?
Yeah, for sure. The sun. I have to make sure I get an hour in the sun, in the bright sun every day. And I actually have a little space near the campground that I live in where it's this bluff that sits over the water. And I go to that bluff and I lay on the rock, just on my bare skin on the rock with the sun on my body as much as I can. And like you, I got tan through clothing, so it'll go into my body beyond my clothing, So that's been huge for me, not only coming down from being sensitive to EMF during the day when I have to work on my computer and meet with clients, but also just really resetting my rhythm so I get tired at the right time and I wake at the right time. In your book, you also talk about simple things people can do with their cell phones, such as switching from a higher cellular data like LTE down to 3G. You can actually do that on your phone. What other phone things do you like to recommend people to do?
I don't use a cell phone very much
at all,
that. So I don't have many recommendations beyond what's in the book. Beyond keeping it away from your body when you're charging it. Maybe get the EMF shielding bag, a pouch.
Mm-hmm.
Downloading videos ahead of time and watching them instead of streaming them live.
Yeah.
Getting them as far away from you, getting as far away from cell towers as you can.
Yeah.
And the early warning sign, I think this is really important, is that the early warning sign is your dopamine and hormone levels and neurotransmitter levels get depleted when you're in too much EMF fields. So that you're in too much EMF and blue light that the screens produce when you don't have neurochemicals to run your brain properly. You don't have the focus and concentration. You're not sleeping well. You can't have the proper level of alertness in your life, in your daily life. So when those things happen, that you're being affected, but you don't necessarily know where it's coming from. And that's one of the best things you can do for yourself is correct those deficiencies and imbalances that cause you to not be able to function properly in your daily life, or you're being you're living life in a compromised state.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I liked mentioning that was mentioned in your book was, really your metal exposure needs to be looked at, like the heavy metals that we might all be carrying around because we are exposed to heavy metals, decreasing those and doing heavy metal detoxes, because that, along with things like tattoos on our body, your book mentioned that actually make us antennas for non-native EMF. Is that correct?
They can. I believe EMFs are bouncing around in your body because they're literally metals, but they're happening at a microscopic nano level. They're just getting in your body and bouncing around chaotically. So it's got to be more dangerous prone to injury than if it went straight through your body.
Yeah.
So
yeah, one other
I have
thing
a feeling.
oh, go ahead.
I have a feeling a lot of that, a lot more damage, the effects of tattoos will become more apparent over the next few years and decades.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're just beginning to research that
Wow.
or see the effects of it. And then we'll kind of figure out we need to do research.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially we're kind of the tattoo nation now. So, and I really loved your water trick that you mentioned by Barb O'Neill. She's someone I follow and I've talked to just over the internet, just through email. But I adore that trick of like taking sea salt and putting it under your tongue and then drinking water to keep that hydration coming into the cell, to keep those minerals getting into the cell. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these are just some of the simple, I mean, completely free and easy things people can do. And you've got literally a plethora of bullet points and tips all along the way through your book. So I can't say enough about how easy this is to read and how everyone should have a copy of it, because everybody has a mitochondria in virtually every cell of their body. So we really need to know how to make the best use of it. So, Randy, I know the book hasn't launched yet, and you're working on your website, but how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you about just some questions or when they can get the book?
Yeah, if someone has some questions, wants to reach out to me directly, I'm at Randy, RANDY, at themitoman.com. Mm-hmm. That's short for the Mitochondriac Manifesto. That's THEMITOMAN.com.
Yeah. And
Randy at themitoman.com. And I plan to do a launch on Amazon, and you may see it up there. I want to get some presence on Amazon, but I don't necessarily want to keep it up there for a long time. So I will have a website, themitoman.com, and I'll probably be distributing and selling on the website, and you can reach me at the website at some point.
Yeah, and any foreseen date about when they could expect it on Amazon, in case they're watching this or listening to it maybe a year after we've podcasted this? Any projected date that maybe it's on Amazon while we're talking about it now, while they're listening to it?
Yeah, I'm probably going to launch it on Amazon near the beginning of November 2021.
Okay.
And you may see it here and there. If you don't see it, you can either email me or you can go to themitoman.com. Hopefully it'll be up by then. I have to, they're censoring a lot, so I have to take precautions and take safety measures.
Sure. Well, Randy, this has been great, so informative, and I can't wait to see how everybody responds to the book. So thank you for your time. And I wish you well on the launch of your book as well. We'll have all the things we mentioned today in the show notes for you guys to check out, and Randy's email as well. So thanks again, Randy.
Thank you, Joe Odell, for having me.
Absolutely. Promo code alert. What is one of the easiest tips to improve your sleep and lower your stress? Blue light blocking, of course. So Alan, nope, not your neighbor or your friend Alan, but actually artificial light at night, ALAN. Alan is something that after dark, if you have that artificial light, maybe fluorescent lighting or blue lights in your house, or a TV shining in your face or a smartphone shining in your face after dark, stimulates your adrenals to not only make cortisol, giving you that I'm too wired to sleep feeling, but also blocks melatonin production. So even if you fall asleep, you will find you have trouble staying asleep. In addition to that, studies have shown that blue light after dark stimulates insulin production, leading to weight gain through late night munchies or just simply by muscle breakdown from stress. And that muscle turns into sugar. That elevates your blood sugar. that causes weight gain. So simply putting on blue light blocking glasses from swanwicksleep.com can be a recipe for sleeping better and even losing weight. And right now, you can save 10% off your favorite stylish pair of Swannies by using my code FITFOR10. That's FITFOR 10. Visit swanwicksleep.com and use my code today. My favorite pair? I'm currently loving the aviators, so get you some today.